Let me ask you something. Why is it that the more you chase, the more she pulls away? Why does giving her everything only make her value you less? Why is it that the guy who stays calm, detached, and hard to get always ends up being the one she craves? Here's the truth. Women don't fall for men who are desperate to be chosen. They fall for men who choose themselves first. And in this video, I'll show you how to become that rare man, not through games, not through tricks, but through a mindset shift that changes the way she sees you forever. Why do so many men hand over their power without even realizing it? Why do they text too much, explain too much, prove too much? Why do they rush to fill every silence as if silence is dangerous? Why do they mistake kindness for attraction and effort for desire? Why do they believe that the harder they try, the more she will respect them? And here's the real gut punch. Has all that chasing ever worked for you, or has it only pushed her further away? The truth is, most men never question this cycle. They repeat it over and over, convincing themselves that next time she'll see their worth. But here's the uncomfortable reality. If you don't understand the psychology of attraction, you'll keep being treated as an option instead of the prize. Think about it. Humans don't value what is given too easily. Scarcity creates demand. What's rare is respected. What's hard to get is admired. And what you don't have full access to, that's what you crave the most. So here's the paradox. When you make yourself too available, too predictable, too easy to reach, you kill the very thing you're trying to build, desire. But when you master emotional control, when you stop trying to prove, when you learn to hold back your energy, suddenly you flip the script. Women don't chase men who are desperate. They chase men who are grounded. They chase men who don't need validation. They chase men who know their value so deeply that they don't have to scream it, they radiate it. So here's what's going to happen in this video. I'm going to break down the exact mindset that makes her see you as rare, as valuable, as someone she cannot afford to lose. By the end, you'll understand why detachment is not about ignoring her, but about controlling yourself. You'll learn how absence is not about games, but about creating value. You'll see why real confidence doesn't come from what you tell her, but from what you silently show her. Stay with me until the end, because this isn't just about women, this is about life. It's about becoming the kind of man who never has to chase because everything, including her, naturally gravitates toward him. What if I told you the reason most men fail with women isn't because they're unattractive or broke or even socially awkward, but because they've been trained to value the wrong things? Think about it. How many times have you been told to be nice, to give her what she wants, to always be available, and yet, has doing all that ever truly made her chase you? Why is it that the more you give, the less she values it? Why is it that the more you try, the less she desires you? Why does it feel like women are drawn not to the men who serve them, but to the men who seem almost untouchable? And why, even when you do everything right, does she end up choosing the guy who barely lifts a finger? Here's the truth most men don't want to hear. Women don't want to work less for your love, they want to work more. When everything comes easy, when you hand over your attention like it's free samples at a grocery store, it loses its flavor instantly. Scarcity creates value. Effort creates desire. This is why the men who seem rare instantly stand out. They're not rude. They're not cruel. They're simply selective. They don't hand over validation on demand. They don't collapse into neediness the moment a woman shows them interest. And because of that, women invest. They pursue. They test harder, because deep down, they want to win something that not everyone else has. Think about it. Do people line up overnight for things they can buy anywhere, anytime? Of course not. But when something feels limited, when it feels exclusive, when it feels like not everyone can have it, that's when desire explodes. Women are no different. When your time, your energy, your presence is rare, she values every moment she gets with you. The real problem is most men don't see themselves as rare. They live in a constant cycle of overcompensating, over-texting, over-pleasing, because deep down they fear losing her. But here's the paradox. It's exactly that fear that makes them lose her. When a woman feels like she already owns you, she stops valuing you. So let me ask you, what if you stopped fearing her loss and instead made her fear losing you? What if your energy, your presence, your attention became something she had to earn? What if every interaction with you left her wondering, does he really like me? Or do I need to prove myself more? That's when the dynamic flips. That's when she starts working for your love. So the question is, how do you shift from being the man who gives everything away to the man who makes her invest everything into you? Because once you understand that, attraction stops being random and starts being something you control. What if I told you the real reason women lose interest isn't because of what you say, but because of how you live? Sounds strange, right? But think about it. Have you ever noticed that the men women admire most, the men they stay hooked on, don't actually try that hard? They live in a way that naturally pulls respect. So here's the big question. Are you building a life that demands respect, or are you living in a way that quietly kills attraction? Why do so many men feel like they're doing everything right, but still get treated like they're replaceable? Why does she get bored when you finally give her your full attention? Why does it feel like the more available you are, the less she values you? And here's the toughest one. Why does she give her best to men who don't even give her half of what you're giving? The truth is, it's not about being nicer or more generous or more available. It's about one thing, the energy your life projects. Here's the hard truth most men don't want to hear. Attraction isn't built in the moments you spend with her. It's built in the life you live without her. If your life has no gravity, no mission, no direction, then she has nothing to orbit around. Think of high-value men. Their schedules are full, their time is scarce. They're not rude about it. They're just deeply occupied with something bigger than themselves. Whether it's business, fitness, building a vision, or just leveling up every area of life, their days carry weight, and that weight makes women lean in. Now compare that to the man who waits for her texts, who rearranges his plans just to see her, who thinks that his entire worth is measured by how much attention she gives. That man is easy to read, easy to predict, easy to dismiss. Why? Because his life doesn't challenge her, it just revolves around her. And here's the kicker, women don't consciously say, "Oh, his life lacks purpose," but they feel it. They sense it in your energy. They notice it when you answer every call instantly, when you're always free, when you treat her as the highlight of your existence instead of making her want to earn a spot in your already meaningful world. Here's a simple principle that never fails. If your life doesn't excite you, it won't excite her either. Think about it. Why do women stay fascinated by men who don't text them back right away? It's not because of the delay itself. It's because their minds go, what's he doing? Why is he busy? What's holding his attention? That curiosity is attraction in disguise. Scarcity builds value. And here's the part most men forget. You don't need to pretend to be busy. You don't need fake games. What you need is a life so full that you literally don't have time to cling. A man who invests in himself never has to chase because his life naturally pulls. Now ask yourself, do you wake up with a purpose? Do your habits demand respect? Does your time feel scarce because you're actually building something? Or is your time always available, always empty, always waiting for her to fill it? Because here's the truth most men ignore. If you don't give your time value, she won't either. So here's the challenge. Your attraction isn't about what lines you say or what tricks you use. It's about the life you live when she's not around. And if your life doesn't command respect, no amount of effort will make her see you as rare. But wait, what happens when you've built this powerful life and she starts testing you? Because trust me, she will test. Have you ever noticed how some men give off a strange kind of power without even trying? They walk into a room, say very little, and yet people lean in as if they're waiting for something rare to happen. Why is it that silence can sometimes feel louder than words? Why is it that doing less can often attract more? Why do some men get respect, attention, and even desire, not because they chase, but because they know when to pull back? Here's the problem many men face. They believe the more they do, the more they give, the more they talk, the more they prove themselves, the more a woman will want them. But does over-explaining ever make you look more confident? Does showering her with constant compliments really make her value them, or does it make them lose their meaning? Does always being available make her feel lucky to have you, or does it quietly tell her that you have nowhere else to be? Think about it. Why is it that men who hold something back seem more attractive? Why is it that a man who doesn't reveal everything all at once becomes more mysterious, while the man who pours out his whole life story on the first meeting gets forgotten? Why is it that a pause before a reply can sometimes be more powerful than words spilling out too quickly? The real problem is that most men confuse effort with value. They think attraction is built by doing more, when in reality, attraction often grows when you understand when to do less. But here's the real twist. Doing less doesn't mean being lazy, careless, or cold. It means knowing the difference between action that adds value and action that subtracts it. It means understanding the hidden psychology of restraint. So let's ask the hard questions. What happens when you stop trying to fill every silence with words? What happens when you stop offering endless attention and start creating space? What happens when you allow her to wonder what you're doing instead of always telling her? What happens when you realize that mystery is not about hiding who you are, but about not giving everything away for free? The answers are where true power begins, but here's the bigger question. Are you ready to shift from a man who overshares, overgives, and overchases into a man who holds the kind of presence that naturally pulls people in? Have you ever wondered why some men seem to have an aura about them, even if they don't say much? They walk into a room and people notice. Women look twice, men pay respect, and without effort, their presence speaks louder than any words they could say. What is that force? Why do some men seem magnetic without even trying? And more importantly, why do so many other men feel invisible even though they're working harder, speaking louder, or trying to prove themselves? Here's the problem. Most men believe attraction is built by action, when in reality it is often built by stillness. They think they need to talk more, joke more, flex more, and constantly prove themselves. But ask yourself, have you ever noticed how trying too hard only makes you feel weaker? Have you ever felt drained after over-explaining, chasing validation, or forcing interactions? Why does it always seem like the men who try the hardest get the least in return? The truth is this: value is not spoken, it is sensed. A man's strength is not in how much he shows, but in how much he doesn't need to show. Think about it. A lion doesn't roar to prove he's powerful, he simply is. His presence commands respect because he doesn't waste energy on performance. Meanwhile, the desperate, insecure man spends his time proving, explaining, oversharing, and chasing only to be overlooked. But here's the deeper problem. Why do men fall into this trap? It's because society conditions them to believe silence equals weakness, that if you don't constantly prove yourself, you'll be forgotten. We are told, speak louder, push harder, show more, yet every time you do that, you slowly leak away your mystery, your power, your edge. Let me ask you this: what is more powerful, a man who immediately reveals everything about himself, or a man who leaves questions unanswered, making others want to know more? What creates more attraction, availability or scarcity? What creates more respect, chasing approval or standing firm in quiet confidence? The problem with most men is they fill every silence, they reveal every detail, they never let space breathe, and in doing so, They kill the very energy that makes them magnetic. Women don't fall for a man because he's constantly explaining himself. They fall for a man who has depth, who makes them curious, who shows through his actions, not his words, that he is in control of himself. So here's the real challenge. Are you unknowingly draining your presence by over-explaining, over-talking, and over-proving? Have you lost the art of stillness, the power of silence, the magnetism of restraint? Because if you have, you're not just losing attraction, you're giving away the one thing that makes you rare, the energy of quiet power. The silent weight of inconsistency. Have you ever wondered why some men can spark attraction instantly but can't sustain it for long? Why a woman may show strong interest at first but slowly pull away, as if the connection was built on quicksand? The truth is, it's not always about looks, money, or charm. It's about something far deeper: consistency. But here's the real problem. Most men don't even realize that their inconsistency is silently killing attraction. They start strong, but then their energy drops. They show discipline for a while, but then they slip into laziness. They act confident at the start, but then they second-guess themselves later. And so the woman begins to ask herself, which version of this man is real? The strong one I first met, or the weak one I now see? Now let's dive into the problems, the questions that expose how inconsistency quietly destroys everything. Why do so many men begin their journey with fire, passion, and discipline, only to let comfort creep in and steal it away? Why does a man go to the gym hard for 2 weeks, but then skip for the next 3? Doesn't he see how this pattern reveals his lack of inner strength? Why does he pursue a woman with focus and clarity, then suddenly start over-texting, over-explaining, and over-apologizing, as if he forgot the calm power he carried at the start? Why does he lead with vision and purpose one day, but collapse into distraction and excuses the next? Why does he show confidence in the beginning of a conversation, but later doubt himself, becoming needy for validation? Why does he act like a king in public, but treat himself like a servant in private, where nobody is watching? The truth is, women notice patterns. They don't just listen to what you say, they watch how consistent you are. A man who is solid one day and shaky the next creates confusion, not attraction, because deep down, what women truly crave is stability. A man who is the same pillar of strength, whether the sun is shining or the storm is raging. But here's the painful part. Inconsistency doesn't only destroy attraction, it destroys a man's self-respect. Every broken promise to yourself chips away at your identity. Every time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," but don't, your inner strength weakens. And when you can't rely on yourself, how can anyone else rely on you? Think about it. How can a woman respect a man who doesn't even keep his own word to himself? How can she trust a man who says one thing but lives another? How can she desire a man whose energy rises and falls like the tide, unpredictable and unstable? Consistency is not about being perfect, it's about being dependable. It's about showing up the same, whether you're winning or losing, whether you feel like it or not, because when a man is consistent, his energy becomes magnetic, his presence feels safe, his value becomes undeniable. So the question is not, can you attract her in the beginning? The real question is, can you sustain her attraction by being the same man every single day? The hidden trap of emotional investment. Have you ever noticed how sometimes the more you give, the less you seem to get back? Strange, isn't it? You pour time, attention, and emotion into someone, thinking it will make them appreciate you more, but somehow it has the opposite effect. Why is it that when a man becomes too available, too open, or too invested, the spark begins to fade? Why does giving her your everything so quickly make her value you less? And why do women seem more drawn to the man who gives in measured doses rather than the one who lays his entire soul on the table? These are not small questions. These are the hidden traps that men fall into without even realizing it. The problem is not that you care, it's how you show it. The more desperate energy you release, the more it communicates that your world revolves around her. And when your world revolves around her, what reason does she have to chase, to work for your attention, or to see you as rare? Let me ask you, have you ever found yourself texting her first every single time, only to feel ignored when she replies hours later? Have you ever bent your schedule, cancelled your plans, or rushed to see her, only to notice she doesn't show the same urgency toward you? Have you ever over-explained your feelings, thinking vulnerability would bring closeness, but instead it made her pull away? These are not accidents, these are patterns. Patterns created when emotional investment is not balanced with self-worth. Women crave to feel your depth, but they also crave mystery. They want to know you care, but they don't want you to bleed out your care so fast that there's nothing left to discover. Here's the truth most men don't realize. Value is not only in what you give, but also in what you hold back. A man who understands how to pace his emotional energy creates pull. He doesn't overwhelm her with constant attention, because he knows attention given without limits becomes ordinary. He doesn't overinvest his emotions, because he knows emotions dumped too quickly lose their weight. He creates space, and in that space attraction has room to breathe, to grow, to intensify. So the question is, why do so many men give it all away up front? Because deep down they fear losing her. And in that fear, they lose the very thing that made her attracted in the first place, their mystery, their independence, their control. But what if you shifted your mindset? What if instead of investing every ounce of yourself right away, you let her earn more of you over time? What if your emotions weren't something you handed out for free, but something rare, something she had to work for, something she had to deserve? Think about it. Doesn't gold become valuable because it's rare? Doesn't water taste sweeter when you're thirsty? And doesn't attention mean more when it's not given to everyone, all the time? So let me leave you with this. The problem isn't that you love too much. The problem is that you show it too soon, too often, too freely. If you want her to value your emotional depth, you must learn to pace it, guard it, and release it like a scarce resource, not an endless tap. The silent weight of approval. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, why does her opinion of me matter so much? Why do I replay her reactions in my head, wondering if she noticed the way I spoke, the way I dressed, the way I acted? Why does it feel like I'm constantly performing, like I'm on some invisible stage, waiting for her to clap or nod with approval? This is the silent weight of approval. It's invisible, but it's heavy. And here's the trap. The more you crave approval, the more you lose yourself. But why does this happen? Think about it. What happens when you walk into a room and your mood instantly changes depending on who's watching? Why do you feel confident when she smiles at you, but weak and uncertain when she doesn't? Why do you feel pressure to always say the right thing, instead of speaking freely from your true self? These are the problems most men never notice, but they silently poison attraction. When you live in the need for approval, you're no longer a man with his own frame. You're a man borrowed by someone else's opinion. You hand her the remote control of your emotions and allow her to press pause, play, or mute whenever she pleases. You stop being the source of your own power, and instead, you become like a mirror, only reflecting back what she gives you. Here's the problem. Women don't fall for mirrors, they fall for flames. A flame doesn't ask for permission to burn. A flame doesn't care who approves, it simply shines, and because it shines, people are drawn to it. Now ask yourself, what happens if you stop chasing her approval and instead anchor yourself in your own values? What happens if your tone, your words, your actions come not from trying to please her, but from a deep place of self-certainty? What happens if, instead of fearing her disapproval, you're okay with it because you know your worth doesn't live in her reaction, but in your essence? The truth is, Women test men not to see if they're perfect, but to see if they're solid. If her silence breaks you, if her frown weakens you, if her disagreement makes you lose control, then you reveal weakness. But if you can remain calm, steady and sure of yourself, even when she disapproves, you show strength. That strength, calm, unshaken, immovable, is magnetic. It's the quiet signal that says, I am not here to earn your approval. I am here because I already approve of myself. And here's the value. The moment you stop needing approval, you gain freedom. Freedom to speak boldly. Freedom to act without hesitation. Freedom to walk away when respect is not given. That freedom makes you unpredictable, powerful and rare. So the real question is, are you living as a man who seeks approval or as a man who already owns it? Have you ever noticed how some men walk into a room and instantly change the energy without even saying a word? People shift in their seats, conversations pause for a second, and even women who weren't paying attention suddenly glance over. Why does this happen? What makes certain men magnetic while others blend into the background like wallpaper? And more importantly, why do so many men never realize that attraction often has nothing to do with what you say, but everything to do with the silent presence you carry? Why do so many men spend all their energy on the wrong things, flashy cars, expensive clothes, rehearsed lines, yet still fail to capture her lasting attention? Why do you think women are quick to sense insecurity, even when you're dressed sharp and trying your best to appear confident? Why is it that a man can be tall, good-looking and successful, yet still lose the girl to another man who doesn't have half of that, but carries a different kind of aura? Could it be that true power lies not in external show, but in the internal weight you bring with you wherever you go? And here's the real question. If women are wired to feel, not just to see or hear, then what do they really feel when they're in your presence? Do they feel safety, respect, mystery, or do they feel neediness, anxiety, and a desperate pull? This is where most men miss the mark. They think attraction is a transaction. They think if they do enough, say enough, or prove enough, she'll finally recognize their worth. But women are not responding to actions alone. They are responding to the vibe that those actions flow from. Think about it. If you're trying too hard to impress her, what does she feel? She feels pressure. If you're secretly doubting yourself while speaking confidently, what does she feel? She feels the crack in your armor. If you're silently measuring her interest every second, what does she feel? She feels the weight of neediness. This is why presence is so powerful. It bypasses the surface and communicates directly at an emotional, even primal level. When a man is calm, grounded, and certain within himself, a woman doesn't just notice it. She feels it deep in her nervous system. Her guard drops, her curiosity rises. She begins to lean in, not because of what you said, but because of what you made her feel without saying a word. Most men are trained to focus outward. What do I do to make her like me? But the rare man flips the frame inward. What energy am I bringing into this moment? Instead of obsessing over words, he focuses on the state of being he carries. Instead of chasing validation, he radiates self-respect. Instead of filling silences with nervous chatter, he lets silence become his ally, because silence in the presence of confidence is louder than words. Here's the truth. Women are not searching for men who entertain them endlessly. They're searching for men whose presence makes them feel something rare, and that rare feeling is usually a mix of safety, intrigue, and respect. That's why a man with genuine presence is often more magnetic than the man with the loudest jokes or the flashiest lifestyle. So the real question is, what are you really radiating when you walk into a room? Are you bringing calm certainty or restless desperation? Are you giving off the aura of a man who knows his worth, or the signal of a man waiting to be chosen? And if presence is so powerful, how do you build it, strengthen it, and make it unshakable so that a woman feels your value before you even open your mouth? The final proof, the hidden door you've been searching for. Have you ever wondered why some men spend their entire lives chasing love, chasing validation, chasing a woman's attention, and yet always end up feeling like something is missing? Why do they give their heart, their time, their energy, their money, and still walk away empty, drained, and broken? Why does it seem like the more effort they put into winning someone over, the less value they are actually seen to have? Here's the harsh reality. Most men are trained to play the wrong game. They are taught to fight battles that were never designed for them to win. They are told that love comes from sacrifice, that respect comes from pleasing, and that attraction comes from doing more. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if the man who does less but stands taller is the one who truly wins? Think about this deeply. Why is it that the men who constantly prove themselves to women are often the ones who are forgotten, ignored, or discarded? Why is it that the man who bends his entire life to please her is the one she eventually disrespects? Why is it that the man who sacrifices his dreams, his friends, his mission ends up with nothing, while the man who stays rooted in his purpose ends up desired? Why do men spend years studying tricks, pick-up lines, and hacks, only to realize none of it can create real value in her eyes? Why do so many men believe that attraction is something they must earn, when in reality it's something they must simply protect and hold by not giving away their worth too cheaply? The turning point. Here's the truth that flips the entire table. A woman does not fall for a man because of what he gives her. She falls for the man because of what he protects within himself. Protect your time, and she feels your value. Protect your energy, and she knows you are not for everyone. Protect your attention, and she craves to earn it. Protect your emotions, and she realizes your strength is rare. This is the door most men never see. It is invisible because they are too busy chasing, too busy proving, too busy giving. They think their worth is measured by what they pour out, but the highest worth is measured by what you refuse to waste. The proof and the solution. Look back at everything we've uncovered. Detachment gave you the power to walk away. Scarcity made your presence valuable. Emotional control turned chaos into clarity. Absence created desire stronger than words. Self-worth lifted you above chasing. Purpose gave you unshakable direction. Standards made women step into your frame. Mystery, boundaries, and selective energy kept her chasing instead of you. Do you see it now? The solution was never about adding more. It was about subtracting the unnecessary. It was about protecting your value, not proving it. It was about standing in your center and letting the world, including her, orbit around it. When you live this way, something miraculous happens. She begins to lean in. She begins to invest. She begins to chase, not because you manipulated her, not because you played games, but because you finally became what most men will never become, a rare, valuable man who cannot be moved. You now hold the entire blueprint. You've seen the traps, you've seen the illusions, you've walked through the problems and uncovered the answers. You don't need another trick, another hack, or another gimmick. What you need is already within you: discipline, purpose, control, standards, and self-worth. That is the secret power. That is the invisible force. That is the rare code that flips the game forever. So the next time you ask yourself, what makes a woman truly work for my love? Know this: it's not your chasing, it's not your begging, it's not your proving. It is your unshakable value, protected and guarded like treasure only the worthy can touch. And when you live like that, brother, you'll never have to chase again. The game is already won.